Spoilers ahead. Watch out, and take care. The movie begins with a shot of a woman, smiling in front of some trees as the sun shines. And then the scene changes to the present day, where Mark Delgado looks around the mess in his office building. He has been living here for months, ever since an epidemic broke out, that causes a fear of open spaces for all humans. The entire world has been out of order, and surviving inside of buildings. Mark grabs some food and looks out of the window, where he sees some burning bridges in downtown Barcelona. He is called to the basement, where the entire staff in the office is digging a tunnel to reach the next building. On his way, he notices that a GPS from one of the cars in the parking lot has been stolen. He proceeds to help everyone to dig, and that day, they finally break through into one of the subway tunnels. They are glad over this proceeding, and everyone prepares to leave. As Mark stands in line with others to get some provisions, he notices his boss, Enrique, has the GPS in his bag. He decides to confront the man, and Enrique agrees to talk to him, if he doesn't tell anyone else about the GPS. We then see a flashback to the time before the epidemic happened. He remembers how Enrique was known to be a ruthless boss, and disciplined all the employees very strictly. He had once called Mark into his office, and berated him for not completing a project in time. He did not listen to Mark when he tried to explain how complicated the task was, but instead gave him a 1-month warning. That night Mark had worked overtime, getting frustrated when he couldn't get his code right. He got a call from his girlfriend, Julia, who said she would wait for him to have dinner, after she and her friend Andrea closed up their shop. But unfortunately, his computer got an error, and he had to stay longer than planned. When he finally got home, he noticed his neighbor peeking out of his door. He walked inside to see that Julia had dinner without him, and found her in her studio, working on a puppet. They sat down to talk, and holding the puppet, she discussed their plans for having a baby. But Mark replied that it was not the right time. That night, Mark was unable to sleep, and watched some TV. He heard the news about a Canadian teenager, who recorded his suicide, after not leaving home for 6 months due to fear. The next day, the video had gone viral and everyone was watching it. One of Mark's co-workers, Rovira, got more disturbed than others and left. Back in the present, Mark and Enrique talk privately, and Mark tells his previous boss that he wants to use the GPS to look for his girlfriend. In exchange, he will give Enrique the supplies he stole from Rovira's locker. At first, Enrique rejects his proposal, but once Mark threatens to tell everyone about the GPS, Enrique agrees. Basically, ever since the GPS on mobile phones don't work, a GPS device is very valuable. The two of them begin their journey in the subway tunnel, passing other people who have made it their home. The GPS works underground, but to preserve the battery, they turn it off, and rely on a traditional printed map to navigate the tunnels. They finally emerge onto a chaotic subway station, where other survivors are living, and there seems to be the law of the jungle in this place. As Mark and Enrique try to navigate, a boy steals the bag containing the GPS from Enrique, and the two run after him. The boy is fast, and takes the bag to an ex-cop named Javier, who is also his older brother. As the city finally loses electricity, Javier forces Mark and Enrique to their knees at gunpoint, and proceeds to get the bag from Mark as well. But Enrique tackles the man, and they grapple for the gun, while Mark manages to get a hold of the GPS, even though it falls down and the screen cracks. Enrique shoots the ex-cop, and the two of them run away, back to the station where the light has gone off and there is disorder among the people. They mingle into the crowd to lose their attackers. They stop by some stairs as Mark checks on the GPS, which fortunately works fine, and Enrique bandages his hand. Mark thinks that Enrique will leave him behind when he sees that he kept Javier's gun, but Enrique says that he will not back down from their deal. We then jump to another flashback to before the epidemic. One day Mark was leaving for work, but heard flies inside his neighbor's apartment. He walked inside after finding the door unlocked, and found the hallway full of trash bags, causing a foul smell to overpower the whole place and attract the flies. The neighbor jumped Mark and held a knife to his throat, asking why he was there. Mark asked him when was the last time he left his home, and the man admitted that it had been months, because he was unable to leave despite trying. At work, Mark arrived to see security dragging Rovira outside, as he'd been fired for never leaving the office and sleeping there. But when they dragged him outside, he began to convulse and foam at the mouth. Mark had a theory, and asked the man to be brought inside the office building, but the man died by that point. Later Mark found some survival gear and canned food in Rovira's locker. Back home, Julia comforted him while he tried to explain to her what was happening, as a lot of shops in their street were closed, and people didn't go out. They made love, and we then shift back to the present day, where Mark wakes up to see that Enrique is not there. He thinks that the man has abandoned him, but then Enrique turns up with a plastic bag to protect the GPS. We also find out that he has a bag full of seeds that he collects, from fruits and stuff. They jump into the sewers, and finally arrive at what they believe is beneath Mark's building. They plan to blow up an opening using the gas cylinder. Enrique's shot fails, and Mark has a go, but he also fails. His ears begin to bleed from the noise, but he finally manages to blow up the cylinder, causing an explosion that throws him back. They make it up into the building, where Mark notices his old neighbor still living there. They get to Mark's apartment, but the lock has been broken, and a man speaking a foreign language lives there. There is a struggle, but eventually, Mark forces his way inside his old apartment. The man is still being hostile, waving his knife at them as Enrique points his gun at him. The fight stops when a woman and child appear. The girl speaks their language, and they find out that this family found an abandoned apartment and took over, and they never saw Julia. They stay there and look around. Enrique finds no food in the fridge, as the family hunts pigeons for food. He obtains some seeds from an old popcorn bag, and also grabs a knife. Meanwhile, Mark finds the girl in Julia's old studio, and looks at the drawing she's making. He notices the name of a doctor at the corner, and turns around the page to see that it's an ultrasound scan. Julia had been pregnant. We jump to another flashback, where Julia and Mark watched with growing horror, the news about what people were calling the panic. People were dying as the government urged people to stay calm. There was then news about women giving birth in dire situations, and Mark got angry, calling it irresponsible. Julia then realized that Mark doesn't want children, and had been feeding her excuses. She locked herself in the bathroom, and did not respond to Mark. Mark left for work, noticing how deserted the streets looked, as more and more people stayed inside. Once at work, he called Julia, but her friend picked up the phone, telling him Julia does not want to talk to him. This urged Mark to rush back home, but as soon as he stepped outside, he was unable to walk on. The panic had gotten to him too. He crawled back inside, and thus was trapped. In the present, Mark and Enrique help the family gather some water, and prepare to leave. Once in the sewers, they reach a crossroad, and begin arguing about where to go next. They get into a scuffle, but break it up soon enough. Mark asks Enrique what is more important than his wife and child, and Enrique tells him he wants to go to the hospital to see his father. He asks him to go with him to the hospital, and after that, the GPS can be Mark's. They find a church, and start a fire and talk. Enrique tells him that his father is the only one who would remember him if he dies. Mark admits that he told Julia he didn't want kids, but in truth, he was afraid of not taking care of any kids they might have. A bear soon makes its way into the church, and together they manage to kill it. On their way, they come across a family, and get to know that the hospital has been burned down. Enrique rushes into a building, and climbs the stairs to look out over the city, seeing that the rumor was true. He gets so distraught that he tries to kill himself, but Mark pulls him back. He tells Enrique he still needs him, but Enrique hands him the seeds, and tells him to leave. Mark goes to the shopping mall Julia and Andrea used to work in, feeling as if he is followed. He doesn't find anything in the shop, apart from Andrea's dead mother. He begins to cry, but notices a message left by Andrea, telling her mother that she is trapped in the supermarket. He heads there, where the supermarket is barricaded to stop people from stealing their food. He shows them Julia's picture, but soon the place is attacked by some people, who try to overtake the place. Mark goes into the melee to look for his girlfriend, but finds Andrea instead. She tells him Julia isn't there, and soon dies after being trapped and crushed by the falling ceiling. Mark is attacked by one of the raiders, but Enrique arrives to save him. Enrique is stabbed by the kid who was attacking Mark, and the two of them make their way to another building, which is a cinema. Mark notices that the building opposite is Julia's doctor's office, and she might be there. He finally finds her in one of the windows, and starts banging the glass and calling her name. She turns around to see him, and they cry looking at each other. Mark goes to find Enrique, who is dying from his wound. Mark tries to save him, but Enrique tells him to let him be. He tells Mark to walk across the street to his girlfriend and child, and then dies. Mark cries over his friend, and then gathers courage. He begins walking, and struggles as the panic hits him. He continues walking, even though his head is pounding, and his ear begins to bleed. He falls and begins to crawl, focusing on Julia's face, as light blinds his vision. He blacks out, but wakes up to see he's with Julia in the building. Julia gives birth, and they raise their son together. They gather rainwater, and Mark grows the seeds Enrique had collected. Their son grows up and steps outside, not affected by whatever afflicted his parents. One day, A group of teenagers come and invite their son, and they let him go. With the next generation being the only hope for humanity, we see that the world is covered with vegetation, symbolizing hope and life. The end. Thank you for watching. Subscribe if you'd like to see more videos like this. Turn on the notifications, and leave a like to help the channel out.